right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Do you want hot takes?
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up until the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, we are off and rolling here on a Monday. That's right, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. All right, happy Monday. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I know I did, and I hope all of you guys did as well. So we got a ton to dive into today. College basketball. The Dayton Flyers were in action over the weekend, an exhibition play against Penn State at the arena. They looked very, very impressive. We'll talk about that coming up here around the corner. The CareSource Invitational Dayton at UD Arena. Of course, there's some other games going on today, including Wright State and Ohio. They'll take each other. They'll go head-to-head coming up later on tonight, an exhibition play at UD Arena, a part of the CareSource Invitational Dayton region, of course. So that's at UD Arena about 8 o'clock, 8:10. We'll have that for you right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Again, we're Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball. So we're excited about that. That tips off coming up later on tonight. Wright State and Ohio University, the Bobcats, about 8:10. They'll be going head-to-head. So that's going to be a fun one coming up later on tonight right here on 1410 Wing AM. So we'll talk some college hoops coming up around the corner. The exhibition play talk always cracks me up because it reminds me an awful lot of preseason polls, right? Like if a preseason poll comes out and it tells you something nice about your team, it's a credible poll. You know, and if a poll comes out and they're not, and it doesn't, prop your team up, oh, well, preseason polls don't matter anyways. That's like exhibition games. That's like exhibition games in college basketball right now, where if your team looks good in exhibition play, fantastic, right? That's awesome. It's fantastic. But if your team doesn't look so good, then you know what? Who cares? It's just exhibition play. So that's the fun part about it. But the one fun part about exhibition play when it comes to college basketball now is because the turnover is so high, because there are so many teams that are, the turnover amongst the players and the personnel, it's sometimes the first opportunity you get to see what the product's going to look like. So Dayton fans got to see that over the weekend. Wright State will get to see that coming up later on tonight. Chris Collins, Jim Brown will be on the call about 8 o'clock right here on 1410 Wing AM. So we'll get to that coming up here shortly. Some other quick updates, too. We're going to get into the Bengals more. I know they didn't play over the weekend because they had that big win on Thursday Night Football over Pittsburgh. But the rest of the AFC North, We'll talk about kind of the landscape of the AFC North moving forward. And the Browns get a big win. I was in Cleveland yesterday. I have to be a real fan to stand and just in that rain and that monsoon and just the miserable weather. But it was worth it. Cleveland got the win. So we'll talk about that here shortly as well. So let's get to a couple quick hits, quick headlines. If you will. This came out earlier today. Ohio State will welcome in Penn State on November 1st, as you guys know, but Ohio State did announce today that this will be a big noon kickoff, and that was pretty much expected. Now, this game will be a scheduled blackout the shoe game as well. All right. Remember, they did the helmet stripe out game earlier in the season when they welcomed in Ohio out of the MAC, doing some of those little themed feature games throughout the season. My problem with this is that, you're going to do a blackout game. I don't know if Ohio State's going to wear their blackout jerseys or not, but you would assume a blackout game would be held at night. That's not happening. This is a big noon kickoff, of course. You guys know my opinion on the big noon kickoff. I don't have a problem with this one being a big noon kickoff because this is a big yawn kickoff. Penn State ruined this. This was supposed to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest matchup of the season. It was supposed to be a battle of top fives, of two top five programs. You were supposed to have a top five matchup between these two teams because, obviously Ohio State's on a bye this weekend, but a week from Saturday, you welcome in Penn State to the shoe. That's the final game before the very first college football playoff rankings come out. And that was kind of the final audition, if you will, before that's the case. So nonetheless, that's kind of where we're at right now as far as that goes. It's a big noon kickoff between the Buckeyes and Penn State. Penn State, what, 4 straight? All their losses coming in Big Ten play. They lose to Oregon. They ended up giving UCLA their first win of the season, and they followed it up with a loss against Northwestern. And their struggles just continue. They continue to lose football games, and it's just kind of one of those things right now where, what we thought was going to be this humongous matchup, a great matchup with a lot on the line, it's not going to mean a whole heck of a lot at this point. But either way, it's another opportunity for Ohio State to get a win in front of their home fans. And Penn State 3-4 on the year. They're coming off of a loss against Iowa. They're also heading into a bye week, so they'll have 2 weeks to prepare for Ohio State. The one thing that's interesting about that Ohio State-Penn State matchup, if you will, is Penn State's season is toast. Okay, they're not making the playoffs. They fired James Franklin. There's only one way to salvage this season. Okay, you're not going to be able to salvage it in regards to being able to go win a national championship or make the playoffs or win the Big Ten. There's only one way to salvage this season, and that is to beat Ohio State. Who knows what happens with Penn State moving forward? Right, the impact of James Franklin being fired at Penn State, because right now that's that in Florida, now that that's open, that's those are the two biggest jobs right there. And you've already seen the domino effect that it had. The second James Franklin got fired, not even 2 days later, Curt Cinetti becomes the second highest paid coach in the Big Ten and the number 3 highest paid coach in all of college football. That's just how this stuff works. So Penn State is a train wreck right now as they're looking to, find a new candidate to come replace James Franklin, but it's becoming difficult to do because you look at Indiana, they slapped on a big extension for, of course, their guy, Curt Cinetti. You saw, Ole Miss came out over the weekend and said that they're working tirelessly and very hard to get a deal done with an extension done with Lane Kiffin to make him one of the, an even more, highly paid coach in college football. So that's going to be done. But the Florida job opening up is going to make this even more interesting. But we'll talk about that more in a moment. But yeah, there's only one way for Penn State to salvage this season, and that is to beat Ohio State on November 1st. They don't care if they lose the rest of the games after. They don't even care if they're not eligible for a bowl game. They don't care about anything. The only thing they care about is, can they beat Ohio State and just kind of take that victory, if you will, to kind of help sleep for the rest of the season, nonetheless. But James Franklin, he gets fired after his team underperforms at Penn State, as we talked about a lot last week. Wisconsin, after Ohio State coming off that win over Wisconsin over the weekend, I thought for sure that, especially with the way Ohio State dominated them, by the way, I mean, just absolutely physically and skillfully dominated the Badgers. Athletic director Chris McIntosh released a statement supporting Luke Fickell. Now, despite the team's disappointment and frustration with the Badger season, and not just this season, but the entire run of Luke Fickell, it is interesting to see that the university is coming out in support of Luke Fickell, saying that we are not looking to fire the head coach in the middle of a season right now. There wasn't a lot of expectations for Wisconsin to begin with coming in. They didn't have a great recruiting class over the last couple of years. They did not have a good portal recruiting class. There was really nothing to make you feel like Wisconsin was going to be anything special this year anyways. I think that's why Luke Fickell's safe. I think some of the coaches that are getting fired are the ones that had expectations to be good this year. So when you have expectations to be good, right? When you have expectations to be good and when you have expectations to be great, like Penn State, they were a national championship contender. They were one of the favorites to win it, right? Like, we talked to a lot of national reporters and analysts out there who came on the show before the season started and all said Penn State's their national championship favorite. Phil Steele came on and said in the 30 plus years that he's been doing that, putting out the Phil Steele magazine, he's never once, even throughout all the Joe Paterno years with all the great teams he had, not once did he ever pick Penn State to be his national championship favorite heading into the year. That's how good Penn State was. So when you underachieve and you fail, emotions are high. And I think that's what led to his firing in the middle of the season. Same thing at Florida. Now, no one was looking at Florida saying, hey, you know what? That's a national championship contender, but you are expected to be an SEC contender. You're supposed to be competitive within the SEC, and they're obviously not doing that. That obviously wasn't happening, and that's why Napier ends up being, they move on from Napier right here in the middle of the season. There was expectations for Florida to win football games. There was expectations for Florida to be good, and they've won 3 games, but they've lost 4. And they moved on from Napier despite the fact that, they just beat Mississippi State 23-21. But when you have expectations and you're not living up to those, you're going to be moved on from. I think the one thing that has made Luke Fickell safe is the fact that he didn't have expectations. Wisconsin's not good. They weren't expected to be good. So therefore, emotions aren't running high in that athletics department at Wisconsin because It's not as if they went into the season excited thinking they were going to have something great. They kind of went in knowing this is going to be a rough year. I think they also went into this knowing that this is going to be Luke Fickell's final year. And I think that he still gets fired by the end of at the end of the season, just probably not in the middle of the season. But I did find that interesting. Nonetheless, some other top news and headlines. How about this? The NBA season is officially here. We know that NBC will be carrying games this season. And we knew that Michael Jordan was going to be featured in some capacity. He was going to be a part of the NBA coverage on NBC. They're bringing back all the old NBA jingle packages and everything else for that nostalgic feel, which I love. But MJ will be a part of the broadcast in some capacity. And the way some people thought that he was going to be sitting at a panel desk, like you see Charles and Chuck and Ernie and those guys like with TNT or now ESPN, I guess. I think people were expecting that. That's not the case. And not once did I think that was going to be the case either. When they were being very selective of how they were wording Michael Jordan's involvement with the NBA on NBC, I kind of figured that this was going to be the case. He is going to be a part of the NBA coverage, but he's not going to be sitting at a panel table with other NBA analysts, analyzing these games and all this other type of stuff. There is going to be a special Michael Jordan feature, and sometimes it'll be aired at halftime. It sounds like the first one will be coming up on the very first doubleheader on NBA on NBC, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But the feature is going to be called MJ Insights to Excellence. This will be a weekly interview segment conducted between Michael Jordan and Mike Tirico. Look, I think I'm whatever. I mean, I'm going to tune in. It's Michael Jordan, no doubt. But, come on. NBC, I get it. Any involvement of Michael Jordan is better than no involvement. But I think when people heard that MJ was going to be involved as an analyst with the NBA returning to NBC, I think that's what we expected. We want to see the GOAT up there and talking about today's stars and today's games and just today's basketball. And instead, it's just going to be a weekly PSA interview with Mike Tirico, I'm sure with pre-approved questions, because MJ is going to control this entire thing. Now he has the right to do so, but this isn't organic. This isn't, you know what I mean? What makes Chuck and Charles and Ernie and that show work so well is because it's very organic. It's just all of their personalities slapped together at a table, and they're using their previous expertise and their personalities, and they're drawing you in. That's not what this is. So am I intrigued by this? I'm intrigued because Michael Jordan really does appearances or interviews like this. So I'll be intrigued, but I guarantee you it's going to be a waste of time. He's not going to say anything that's going to make you think. He's not going to, say anything that's going to make you view the game differently today. This is just done. I mean, they threw a ton of money at him. He's earned that right to do it. It is what it is. But this isn't exactly what I or many people thought that it was going to be when you talk about the involvement of Michael Jordan with the NBA on NBC coverage. Still cool. It's still Michael Jordan. Don't get me wrong. But I've seen a lot of people's disappointment as far as that's concerned. It's not even a live interview. It's going to be it's an interview that would have already been recorded, and it'll be edited, and it'll be positioned to make him just the way he's done it his entire career, positioned himself to be the GOAT. He's going to position this to where you only see him for his greatness, and there'll be nothing there to touch on his failures, because Michael Jordan has been a PR king from the very, very beginning. LeBron has been a PR nightmare. He has made so many PR mistakes that it has made it easy to say that he's not the GOAT, when really he's been one of the most, I think his career overall has been more successful when you think about where he's done it, how long he's done it, with how many different teams and coming into the league at 18 and all this. LeBron's done a horrible job of winning the PR wars. MJ has always won the PR wars. And that's why he's still viewed at the way that he is today. And this is just another example. But yes, the NBA season is officially here. There'll be a weekly MJ segment, weekly MJ interview feature called MJ Insights to Excellence. This will be a weekly interview segment conducted between Michael Jordan and Mike Tirico. One more update with you here. Rhett Lauder, Reds pitcher, of course. He missed the entire 2025 season due to injuries. Finally on the mend. He's working on a return for the 26th season, and so far so good. He's pitched in a couple, less than a handful of games right now for the Arizona Fall League. And in those couple of games that he's pitched, he has 0 walks. He has walked 0 batters. He struck out 5 and has an ERA just a hair over 2. So he's heading in the right direction. We've talked about the strength of this Reds team being their pitching, their homegrown pitching. When you look at the fact that, you have a Hunter Green, a Nick Lodolo, an Andrew Abbott, a Chase Burns, and now a Rhett Lauder. And you also have Littell, who the Reds, we're waiting to see what they're going to do with all their arbitration players. What are they going to do with guys like him, with Brady Singer and others? If Rhett Lauder is healthy and trending in the right direction, I think that's going to have an impact on some of these arbitration players that the Reds are going to be working with. If Rhett Lauder is struggling and not getting healthy, or he just doesn't look right, I think they're going to have to keep one of those outside veteran arms in this bullpen, in this rotation, just to give him a little flexibility. Nonetheless. All right, I'm Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. So nonetheless, Lamar, I'm gonna look into that more because I saw that pop up a little bit ago about Jameer Brown again, with the NIL situation with the OHSA. I'm gonna look into that more before we dive into it. But yes, I did see that news had come out just a little bit ago. We'll definitely jump into that. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. I also want to give more shout outs to all of our other sponsors on the show. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Dayton Weight Loss Secret. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret program has successfully helped thousands of people, me included, lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. Schedule your free consultation today by calling Dr. Justin and his staff. You can call him, or you could do it virtually, or call them at 937-999-1480, or you could do it online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. Other sponsors I want to give a shout out to are friends over at Titan Graphics. All right, Titan Graphics is the Miami Valley's choice for custom screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional products. Place your order today with our friends over at Titan Graphics. All of our signage and all of our prize giveaways and all of our, the koozies, the wristbands, anything that you need. If you're a business owner or a coach and you just need any kind of screen printing or any kind of embroidery done, give Titan Graphics a call today. They do great work for us, and I promise they'll do great work for you as well. All right, over the weekend, we didn't see the Bengals because they had a big game on Thursday night, and we basically said, hey, that Thursday night game against the Steelers, the season is on the line, and I'm not going to lie to you. I felt like last Thursday I was watching a playoff game. There was a lot of intensity there, and I sensed it from both teams. The Bengals were playing to keep their season alive, and the Steelers were playing to give themselves some wiggle room moving forward. If they would have beat the Bengals, that would have created a 3-game separation between them and the rest of the AFC North, knowing that they had some tougher games coming up. As far as the Bengals, you lose that game, that would have been your 5th straight loss. You would have basically been out of the playoff conversation. But that win was so massive this past Thursday. It has everybody talking about the possibility of Joe Flacco and the Bengals to be right back in the hunt for the playoffs, or at least to buy more time until Joe Burrow returns in December. So let's take a look at the AFC North picture when we come back. The Browns get a big win over the weekend. Obviously, the Steelers played the Bengals on Thursday. Talk about the Ravens. We have all that coming up when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits.
Radio.
Justin Kinner back with you here on a Monday. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. All right, 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Let's switch gears over to the NFL. We opened up with just some quick hit headlines. Just a lot kind of going on right now. College basketball about to get underway. Wright State going to be in action tonight. We'll have it for you. Ohio State and Ohio out of the MAC. Exhibition play, part of the CareSource Invitational Dayton Classic. So we have that coming up later on. That'll be about an 8:10 tip-off time, of course. We'll have coverage beginning at 8 o'clock. Chris Collins, Jim Brown will be on the call live at UD Arena. So we'll have that for you coming up here later on this evening. We'll talk about that and more. Dayton was in action over the weekend, and they have another young, exciting player that they got through the transfer portal, and he put on a show over the weekend and has Flyer fans buzzing. So we'll talk about that and just kind of what is the right mentality to have as a fan when you watch your college basketball teams perform in these exhibition games? Like, what's your big takeaways from these? It's like kind of like preseason. It's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like anything what can you really take away from it? If you're going to perform poorly and people tell you, well, who cares? It's just exhibition play. Then why should you get excited if you perform great? Like, we'll get to all that coming up. But the NFL, weird weekend, of course. No Bengals football because they took care of business. They did their thing this past Thursday when they beat the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. Of course, we all know the storyline. It's kind of been quiet on the Bengals front as of late because they played on Thursday, and the sports news cycle over the weekend just kept churning. But the Bengals, one of the biggest storylines in all of sports right now, especially with this the very intriguing addition to Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was phenomenal in that second look. That was his second game with the Bengals. He kind of feels like that was the first game with the Bengals, but I mean, obviously the week that he got traded, he had just got back from London with the Browns, who had just lost, over that way against the Vikings, and then he finds out he gets traded. He had a couple days to kind of not move. I don't know really what his situation is, but to get to Cincinnati and transition over there and start preparing to be a Bengal, and he had to do that while preparing to face a team that he already beat earlier in the season with the Browns in Green Bay. So he had to hit the road to go to Green Bay and make his first start with the Bengals. It was just kind of There wasn't a lot there, but a lot of that was with it was kind of by design. I mean, they weren't opening up the playbook. He didn't know much of it. Still doesn't know a ton of the playbook, as you kind of heard some of the sound bites and the clips in the coming days after Thursday Night Football, that they were piecemealing a lot of that together as he's still learning the playbook, of course, and learning Zach Taylor's offense, of course. But you know what? When you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, you just lob that baby up there and let those two go get it. And that's what he did. And that worked out very well for the Cincinnati Bengals this past Thursday night. Cincinnati still not, if the playoffs were today, as we sit here 8 weeks in, the Bengals still wouldn't be in, but they're right there. Jacksonville, all right, who has lost back-to-back games. They're 4-3. They're sitting there in that seventh spot, that final spot if the playoffs were to start today. The Chargers have lost a couple of games in a row as well. Now, a lot of that has to do with the injuries that they've sustained. Bills coming off of a bye week. The Steelers are a little vulnerable. The Bengals are just on the outside looking in at 3-4. The Bengals are 3-4, and they have a very manageable schedule moving forward. I find them a little fascinating, to be honest with you. I like Joe Flacco, and I like the Cincinnati Bengals under Joe Flacco's tutelage right now in the absence of Joe Burrow. I think we're learning a lot about, as great as Joe Burrow is, we're learning about a lot of his flaws right now in his absence. Now, I think it's unfair to put a lot of stock into that Steelers game. It was a hell of a game. It was a great performance from Joe Flacco, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, but this team can only go as far as consistency takes them. We know what they're capable of. We know what Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are capable of. Joe Flacco has been in the league for, 20 years? He's won a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He's led multiple teams to the playoffs. Hell, of all the teams that he's led to the playoffs, the most impressive one is freaking Cleveland when you look at the mess that they are, right? Like, you look at what he has done and you look at what Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are capable of, you know that this team is capable of doing a lot of different things, good and bad. But I think it's best to be, when you were looking at a team like Cincinnati, because when you started to see how they lost against the Vikings and the Broncos and the Lions, there was really nothing there to be positive about. They weren't running the ball. They couldn't stop anybody. The quarterback kept turning it over. And I'm not meaning to bring up the Browns here, but like Cleveland has a very dominant side of the ball on the defense. And as bad as Cleveland has been, a lot of Browns fans, including myself, look at that defense and say, there's something there. If they got hot in the right spot offensively, they could ride that defense to make things interesting, right? Cincinnati didn't have any of that in those 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks without Joe Burrow. They now have that with Joe Flacco. They now have something that they can look at and say, I know we have flaws. Our run game is one of the worst in the league. Defensively, we can't stop anybody. And our O-line technically has looked better with Joe Flacco just because he gets rid of the ball quicker, right? So now that you have Joe Flacco, there is something that Bengals fans could look at and say, we might have a chance because. The Browns might have a chance because defense. The Ravens are bad, but if they get Lamar back, the Ravens might have a chance because Lamar Jackson. That's why last year, as frustrating as you fans were, you still felt like you were in it because you have Joe Burrow. And with Joe Burrow out, there was just nothing to feel hopeful about with how bad this Bengals team looked for weeks. Joe Flacco provides that stability that this team is looking for. So I like the road ahead for the Cincinnati Bengals because you're going to play the Jets coming up this Sunday. It's a 1:00 kickoff on CBS. You got the Bears coming up a week from Sunday as well. Again, that's a game that I'm very curious to see what that line is going to look like. I would assume the Bears might be slightly favored, but these are going to be really good games moving forward. And by the way, there's a bye week coming up after Chicago, and then Cincinnati is going to be at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's going to be pissed off after the way they lost that Thursday night game at Paycor. So I think that the Bengals have a legitimate shot to go on a run here. I gave them 0% chance a few weeks ago because, well, again, look how poor they looked. I had people saying, you were just burying this team a few weeks ago, and now you're saying that they have a shot. I don't know why we take things that people say and not account for information changing. I mean, how you could watch the Vikings, or how you could watch the Bengals at the Vikings, at the Broncos, and against the Lions and actually think that this team had a shot at doing anything. I don't think that makes me crazy. But I'm willing to adapt my take if a change that the team makes all of a sudden brings out some strengths. And Joe Flacco does that for the Bengals. Can he keep it up? Can he stay upright? Can he stay healthy? The run game that we saw against Pittsburgh on Thursday night, can the Bengals keep that up? Is that who they are? The offensive line has looked better. Kev popped on the show last week. One thing that we talked about on the Friday immediately after that Thursday night win was you look at Cincinnati and you look at, the fact that Joe Burrow gets hit and hit a lot. Joe Burrow, when you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I get it. You're Joe Burrow. You have a cannon of an arm. You have Jamar Chase. You have T. Higgins. If you're going to drop back and you have those weapons, you want to kind of let them have time to cook, and you want to let some of these plays down the field develop. Well, to do that, you have to scramble, you have to extend plays, and then, of course, the pocket collapses, plays break down, you put your O-line in bad spots, and, of course, when you're injury-prone like Burrow, it becomes a problem, and we've seen all of that boil over, right? But you look at Joe Flacco, who is not nearly as athletic as Joe Burrow, and I'm not saying Joe Burrow is super athletic by any means either, but Joe Flacco can't move, but he knows his deficiencies and he knows how to play around his deficiencies. He gets rid of the ball quickly. Even with getting rid of the ball quickly, still found a way to allow Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to eat and make big plays down the field. Joe Flacco, I think, he's not even close to being better than Joe Burrow. I would never say that. But we're 2 weeks into this Joe Flacco experiment in Cincinnati, and I will say the only thing that he does better than Joe Burrow is he plays the position smarter. And this team right now their margin for error is so tiny that they need a quarterback that's going to play smart football. Joe Burrow does not play smart football in regards to a lot of his decision-making. But the reason he doesn't is because he knows he's capable of making those big splash plays to the point to where he makes himself vulnerable, and it's at the expense of the team. Joe Flacco knows he's not Joe Burrow, which means he's going to play to his strengths. He's going to get rid of the ball quickly and make sure that he gets the ball to the playmaker's hands, which, of course, that's what has led to a lot of people criticizing the Steelers. That ball's going to Jamar Chase, and yet you just kept letting Joe Flacco throw the ball to Jamar Chase. It was unbelievable, the lack of adjustments that Mike Tomlin, this leader of men, and this great defensive mind, couldn't figure it out. It's the most expensive defense in the league. You went out and got guys like Jalen Ramsey and others because you wanted to position this defense to be able to handle going up against the Bengals twice a year, the Ravens twice a year. When you do come across the Chiefs and when you come across Josh Allen and the Bills, that's what that defense, that's why the Steelers have invested so much money into that defense, and yet they made zero adjustments. What happens for the Bengals when teams do make adjustments? That's my curiosity right there. But Joe Flacco plays the quarterback position at a very high IQ level. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that the Bengals have a shot. I really do. The Jets, the Bears, the Steelers. All right, I put the Patriots kind of in a toss-up situation. I don't like their chances against the Bills, but I could be wrong there. The Ravens, who are the Ravens going to be? Because they're still trying to get healthy. So who knows what's going to ultimately happen? But Cincinnati, they're 3-4. They're a game behind the Pittsburgh Steelers atop the division, and they're very much so in this thing. And I think Cincinnati, they're going to be 500 coming up on Sunday. I think they're going to beat the Jets. And for me, I'm all about chaos, and I'm all about great storylines. And I think Joe Flacco was my favorite storyline for obvious reasons 2 years ago when he led Cleveland to the playoffs. That was such a cool storyline. And I think we're seeing another storyline develop in Cincinnati with this same quarterback, Joe Flacco. And I'm fascinated to see if he can, lead a miracle run. I think that the Bengals are going to win. Vegas agrees as well. ESPN Bet, our friends over at ESPN Bet, have Cincinnati favored in this at home by 6.5. The Bengals are favored to win over the Jets by 6.5. The Jets are looking for their first win of the season. You would really hate if you're Zach Taylor because it was getting noisy. We're talking a lot in college about all the coaches being fired in the middle of the season. The Browns are coming off of a win over, McDaniels in the Dolphins over the weekend, and many people view that as the losing coach is going to lose their job. McDaniels is safe for now, but Stefanski, there was a lot of question marks. If they lose over the weekend, what would have happened to him? Zach Taylor, he's safe, right? But you can't go on, you can't be at home and you can't beat Pittsburgh and you can't get everyone to buy back in and then go lay an egg at home against the Jets 0-7 Jets, especially at home when you're a 6.5-point favorite. That's a solid line. I think the Bengals get it done. Doesn't matter. They're going to be back at 500. And that's what makes the Steelers matchup this weekend coming up so intriguing as well, because the Steelers could drop to 4-3. The Bengals would improve to 4-4, and they're going to be a half game out of first place sitting atop the AFC North. The Bengals, they're legit. I think that, and when I say legit, they're not Super Bowl legit, but they are playoff legit. And the AFC North is not good, and I put them in that position as AFC North legit. And when I say not good, I just don't think there's Super Bowl contenders in the North. I don't think any team right now, as constructed, can win a Super Bowl. I don't think Pittsburgh could do it. I don't think Cincinnati can do it, even with Joe Burrow. That's no hate. I just think when the defense, I need to see more improvements. But as we sit here right now in mid-October, past the midway point of October, I don't think that they're good enough to win a Super Bowl, even with Joe Burrow. And that's not a shot at him. That's just how many flaws this team has. The Ravens and then Cleveland, right? But the Bengals are AFC North legit. They can win this division. I don't believe in the Steelers. I just don't. And I believe in Joe Flacco because I've seen Joe Flacco do it before. And we just watched him do it with Cincinnati on one night at home against Pittsburgh. I get it. But, man, they're 2-0 in the division. They have all the confidence in the world. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and you have a very smart quarterback in Joe Flacco who's going to play to the team's strengths. And they have them. And two best weapons he's ever played with. I'm very fascinated to see what happens moving forward. All right, so what else happened over the weekend in the AFC North? Obviously, the Ravens had a bye week. Okay, the Ravens were on a bye. The Steelers lost to the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. So 3 of the 4 AFC North teams were off yesterday. 3 of the 4 AFC North teams were off yesterday. The one team out of the North that did play was the Cleveland Browns, and man, oh man, they found a way to, I'm not going to say save their season, but they at least got some fans to back up off the ledge a little bit. No one's completely quitting on this team just quite yet. The Browns, a very impressive win yesterday at home over the Dolphins. We'll talk about that when we come back. How do the Browns stack up amongst the mess that is the AFC North? We'll get to all of that when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits.
Radio.
Justin Kinner back with you here on Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. The Cleveland Browns get their second win of the season, 31-6, the final in Cleveland yesterday in a very rainy, wet, soggy day. For whatever reason, we saw the forecast, and some of my best friends and I, we all made the trip over to Cleveland. We spent the weekend in Cleveland, watched the Cleveland Browns, stood in the rain, tailgated in the rain. I'm feeling it today, obviously, but the bottom line is when you do all that. You stand in the rain and you feel like crap the next day at work for being out and all that stuff. It's worth it when they get a win, and it's only their second win of the season. And I hate doing the woulda, coulda, shoulda stuff. I hate the woulda, coulda, shoulda. But the Browns are right now, as we sit here this far into the season, it's so frustrating when you look at how vulnerable the AFC North is. When you look at how vulnerable the AFC is, I don't think the AFC is very good. And I don't even know how good Cleveland is, but there's a lot of good about Cleveland. There's obviously a lot of bad, but you could say the same thing about the Baltimore Ravens. There's a lot of really good about Baltimore. There's a lot of bad as well. That's a team that averages, close to 30 points a game with Lamar Jackson, and they're averaging less than 10 in his absence. That's a team that has a lot of really, really good and clearly a lot of really bad. When you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, statistically, non-statistically, there's a lot of good. I like Aaron Rodgers. All right. I'm not a big Mike Tomlin guy, but the guy wins, right? Can't deny it. No matter what I say, no matter how much I criticize him, the guy just finds ways to win football games every year. Never had a season below 500. There's something to that. No matter how much I think some of his stuff, he's very overrated in a lot of departments. The one thing you cannot deny is they win football games. But you look at Pittsburgh, they're vulnerable. They have some strengths that prop them up, but man, they're vulnerable because of a lot of their deficiencies. And then where I stand with Cincinnati. We saw them without Joe Burrow in those couple of weeks against the Vikings and against the Broncos and the Lions. When they don't have even an ounce of semi-high IQ football at the quarterback position, that offense completely disappears. Joe Flacco is a very smart quarterback. He's not going to go out there and try to be a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow. He's going to go be the guy that's allowed him to be in the league for 20 years. And you saw it on full display this past Thursday night. I'm a Joe Flacco guy. It pains me. You guys know I'm a Browns fan. You know that you all think I'm a Bengals hater. I think there's a lot of stuff about the Bengals in recent years that is very overrated. One thing I do not think is overrated is Joe Flacco. I think the guy can help you win football games, but Cincinnati has to do a lot of things right themselves. They have to protect. They did that. They protected him against the Steelers. They have to run the football. They can't run the football, but they did against Pittsburgh. So if they can moving forward, okay. And their defense, they have to find ways to get stops. You can run on that defense. You could throw on that defense. But to their credit, they forced turnovers this past Thursday night. They forced turnovers to get stops. They run the football and protect Joe Flacco and give him time to eat with Jamar Chase and T. The Bengals are going to have a chance. But they have a lot of problems as well. And then there's Cleveland. You look at the strongest side of the ball. You look at the Baltimore strength. You look at Cincinnati and Pittsburgh's strength. And you look at Cleveland's strength. All of the team's strengths don't come close to Cleveland's strengths, and that's that defense. Now you start stacking up deficiencies. I think Cleveland and Baltimore are very similar. I think Cleveland's better than Baltimore right now. Without Lamar Jackson, Cleveland's not the worst team in that division. I don't care what anybody says. Baltimore, they can't score, and they can't stop anybody. They don't have one good side of the ball. Cleveland has a dominant side of the ball and an up-and-coming side of the ball that still needs work and needs addressed, and that's offense. That's the pass game. The run game might have got figured out with this Quinshon Judkins pick, who I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I wanted Trevion Henderson. I'm so glad that they did not go the Trevion Henderson route because it's so difficult to replace a guy like a Nick Chubb, and the Browns may have just done that with Quinshon Judkins, who was phenomenal. 3 touchdowns. Yesterday, it was windy as can be. Not just raining, downpouring. It was just horrific weather. And a rookie running back put his team on his shoulders yesterday and went out there with a rookie quarterback who did not turn the ball over, who made the right throws, made the right plays at the right time. And Cleveland, with behind their defense, who forced multiple turnovers themselves, including a pick six, everything, special teams. That was Cleveland's best game of the year last week. They did absolutely everything right. And it could not have come at a better time. Is Cleveland back? Are they a contender? I know. But with that defense, if that offense gets better each week, If every week the offense starts to produce more and now they're putting up 20 or more points, which is something they haven't done in quite some time up until yesterday, like that stuff matters. And in that division, all right, Pittsburgh's 4-2, the Browns are 2-5. Now, one of those losses is to Pittsburgh, but that's a 2-game difference, and things can swing and change up so quickly in the NFL. We're seeing it with Cincinnati. You fans quit on them, including me, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And yet here we are, including me, the Bengals hater, looking at this saying, I think Cincinnati has a shot. Why? Because my information has changed with the league. The AFC has changed. It stinks. And it's allowing teams who aren't very good at the beginning of the season, it gives them a little wiggle room to improve as the season progresses. And if Cleveland continues on the trajectory that we saw yesterday, where that defense just continues to be the dominant side, when they're motivated, they can beat anybody. They can contend with anybody when they're motivated. And if that defense with Myles Garrett feels like the offense is carrying their weight in some capacity, you're going to get that motivated defense. And we saw that yesterday against Miami. I'm not going to overreact and act like they beat a dominant opponent. Miami has a lot of problems themselves. But Cleveland has not been good enough in recent weeks to even beat bad teams. They dominated a bad team yesterday. And that's what good teams should do. Is Cleveland a good team? No, they have too many flaws, but they have the most dominant side of the ball in the entire AFC North, which gives them a shot. I don't give Baltimore a shot. When you can't score, you can't run the football, and you can't stop anyone defensively, I give you zero shot. That's why I gave the Bengals zero shot, but I liked what I saw against Pittsburgh on Thursday. If they can continue that, I'll give them a shot. Cleveland, I'm going to give a shot because they could run the football and they could dominate you defensively. My God, they stink when it comes to the pass game. I get that, but they could run the football, and they have a dominant defense. And the AFC is not very good, and the AFC North is vulnerable. I wouldn't put money on Cleveland doing it, but don't sit there and tell me there's absolutely no way. There's a way. Look at how bad this North is. There's a way. There's a way. But I find the North, for all the, like in years past, I've always found the AFC North fascinating for all the right reasons. I find them fascinating right now for all the wrong reasons. It's chaos, but as a sports talk host, I love chaos. And yesterday, being in Cleveland, watching that game, 31-6, the final, Cleveland dominating on all sides of the ball defensively. You know, obviously with the run game, with that weather the way it was. I mean, it was literally. I mean, I call it great football weather, but it's not the greatest football weather when it comes to, you're trying to develop a quarterback and get him comfortable out there. We did see Dylan Gabriel attempt 18 passes on the afternoon. He completed 13 of those, 116 yards, no touchdowns. But what he has not done is he has not turned the ball over. And that's one of the biggest reasons that the Browns made the change from Joe Flacco to Dylan Gabriel, was because Joe Flacco was turning the ball over too much. Dylan Gabriel doesn't turn the ball over. But what made Joe Flacco interesting is I could handle the turnovers if you put us in position to score points. It's the good and the bad, right? Well, when Joe Flacco's turning it over and they're still not scoring points, you got to sit there, scratch your head and say, why are we doing this again? I'd rather go with the less talented throwing quarterback that won't turn it over so that it can keep us it even puts you in a better position to win the field position game. Cleveland was constantly losing the field position game because of the timing of the turnovers and where Joe would turn it over at. So, and that's the crazy thing as we sit here right now with Cleveland. They've been in position to win games ever since they switched over to Dylan Gabriel. They should have beat Minnesota. I hate the woulda, coulda, shoulda game, but man, I look at that Bengals game week 1, should have been the Browns. They got their ass kicked in week 2 against Baltimore. I have nothing with that one, but you beat Green Bay in week 3. You got your ass whooped against the Lions. I got nothing for that one. They had the Vikings dead to rights. Dead to rights. That should have been their 3rd win of the season. They should be sitting at 4 wins right now. That was win number 2 yesterday. But every time they've had defense is why they had a chance to win week 1. Offense wasn't good enough. Defense is why they won in week 3. Defense is why they had a chance to beat the Vikings. And defense is why they dominated the Dolphins yesterday. And when they got that contribution from the offense, that's why I'm saying, Cleveland, you guys want to mock it. That's completely fine. The Browns have not done enough to justify being given the benefit of the doubt. But if any other team in the NFL, if I told you that they have a top 5 defense and a top 5 and a top 10 run game, you would say, yeah, they have a chance. So why would you not say it for Cleveland? Because your response will be the Browns is the Browns. And the Browns' biggest responsibility moving forward now is to start coming through in situations that prevent people like you from saying that. I can't tell you can't say it because it's true. Cleveland always seems to find a way to justify your guys' criticisms. But yesterday, Dominant win defensively, dominant performance in the run game. Rookies performing great all over the place. We'll see what Cleveland can do moving forward. Let's go to Steve from Springboro. What up, dude? Thanks for holding. How are you? Happy Victory Monday.
Yeah, you took some of my thunder, but that's all right. I'll piggyback off everything you said. I'm going to add this too. Whoever wins the AFC North this year will have a losing record. And fans out there, don't tell me it can't happen, because it has happened. Seattle Seahawks won I think it was the NFC West a few years back with a losing record. I think the New Orleans Saints have done it, so it can happen. And another thing, piggybacking off what you said, the AFC as a whole is weak. And I don't see, Kansas City starting to do their normal thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think I know that we're going to have to, get that offensive line straightened out in the off season. I still don't know if Gabriel is the guy. I don't know that Shador's the guy. I know they're going to use the rest of the season to try and figure that out. So the thing about Flacco, Bengals fans, listen and listen well. He did the same thing for us 2 years ago, and then when we got in the playoffs against the Texans, he throws 3 picks, and we lose the game. And it's going to happen for him. He will do it. So I've been hearing all this garbage about, these. I listened to Dan Patrick this morning. They were wanting to come up with this T-shirt about the commercial for Mako.
Yeah.
Better get Flacco. You've probably seen it or heard about it. You better pump your brakes, Bengals fans, because it ain't happening. One other thing real quick, Buckeyes, I'm going to put it out here right now. With that defense, I don't see any reason why they can't be back-to-back national champions. And it started off with me Friday night, the old high school that I went to, Valley View.
Yep.
Put a hurting on Brookville. Already qualified for the playoffs. They will get a bye, which the top 4 teams get. Isn't it crazy how the high school, everything is falling in place just like college, just like the NFL. Now the high school, the Ohio High School Athletic Association has changed it. When your top 4 guys, you get a bye week and then a home playoff game, just like college and just like the NFL. So it's all coming to fruition. That that's the way it is, and you get some prep, I guess, for college, and then get some prep, get some ready for the NFL. Real quick, I don't know if you've heard anything else about the kid from Wayne or whatever.
Yep.
It's come out. As soon as you can find out, I'm interested in seeing what's going on with that. Let you go. We're going to, there again, 4 points, and we could very easily be 4-3. Like you said, shoulda, coulda, woulda. I get that, but you never know what's going to happen coming down the road. Pittsburgh could fall apart. Cincinnati's not going to do anything. All the fans are humped up and pumped up. By Friday morning, I went to some of our customers, Bengals fans, excuse me. Hadn't been hoodayin' for weeks. And all of a sudden, the first time I walk in the shop, there they go. I said, there you go, guys. That the fans are really what make me sick with the Bengals, why I hate them so much. I mean, I hate all 3 teams in the division, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. And yeah, I am a hater, and everybody knows me, knows I am a hater. They want to label you. I'm the hater, baby. I'll let you go. Talk to you later.
All right, Steve from Springboro, the ultimate Browns fan, right there. So there you go. But I agree with Steve right now when it comes to Dylan Gabriel. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, you don't go through all the mess you did with Dylan Gabriel to I get it. Like, he doesn't turn the ball over, which is excellent. But there are times where I will take a quarterback who is a little too aggressive. Like, that's what Baker Mayfield, that's the other thing people forget about too. When people talk about why did Cleveland move on from Baker Mayfield, if you guys remember, Baker Mayfield was also a turnover machine back when he was in Cleveland. Okay. People forget about that. People like to bring up, when people talk about who Baker is now as a quarterback, that guy doesn't turn the ball over. That was something that he did a lot of. People want to bring up the bad attitude of Baker. They want to bring up, the time when he was bringing up Duke Johnson's money in interviews and kind of clashed with Kevin Stefanski. There was a lot of things that Baker did that team was willing to overlook because he could throw touchdowns. But what he kept doing was throwing interceptions. And that was a big no-no for Kevin Stefanski's offense. And I get wanting to bring in a quarterback that's not going to turn it over, but there has to be some give and take. I will take a quarterback who turns the football over if it's at the expense of trying to make aggressive plays and you're consistently scoring. That's why, when Joe Flacco was here the first time in Cleveland, he turned it over a lot. But man, they were averaging, 25, 26 points per game. They were blowing teams out. Those turnovers didn't hurt Cleveland. And then you got to the playoffs, as Steve mentioned, and it was 3 interception game. And, that was the lasting memory that Stefanski had of Flacco running that offense. Flacco's job is to come in as a backup, is to help lead you, put you in position to make the postseason. He's not going to take you to the promised land, right? That's the case for any backup quarterback. And I feel like that's Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel has backup quarterback vibes. All right, Dylan, just go out there and don't turn the ball over. I don't know. I would all right, I don't want you to turn it over, but man, we really need you to be, aggressive, take chances. If Kevin Stefanski is managing Dylan Gabriel as if he is a backup quarterback trying to prevent him from making mistakes, and I get that to a certain degree, but I will take a turnover if it means unleashing this guy's confidence to be able to sling it up and down the field. And that I have zero confidence in Dylan Gabriel. He has not shown in any game thus far in the handful of games that he can go sling it up and down the field and put this team in position to score. That's great that he has such a great completion percentage. That's great that he doesn't turn the ball over. But when your coach is managing you so damn terrified and scared, I don't get how that's helping. I would take Joe Flacco's recklessness at times, knowing that he has a strong enough arm to lead you down the field, than a guy who won't turn it over, but also can't throw it further than 5 or 10 yards down the field. I want the Browns to win. They got to win yesterday. I want them to win moving forward. If Dylan Gabriel's good enough to keep winning with, then great. But at some point, you can't say, well, we won. We didn't win because of Dylan Gabriel, but he didn't lose us the game. At some point, you need you have to have a quarterback that wins you games. Joe Burrow wins Bengals games, right? Josh Allen physically wins the Bills games. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, the greats in the league today, they physically go out and lead you to victories. It's what Deshaun Watson did when he was in Houston. It's what the Browns were hoping Deshaun Watson would do when he got to Cleveland, and he's not. But to sit here, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that what I saw from Dylan Gabriel was impressive. It wasn't. The only thing he didn't do was the only thing that he did great was he didn't turn the ball over. And yesterday's a little bit of a different case because, I was there. That weather was the wind, the rain, everything. I'm not going to really use yesterday's game to sit there and use that, but it looked, the rain or no rain, it looked the exact same as the previous handful of starts that we've seen from him. It's safe. It's vanilla. It's a boring offense. And thank God for Quinshon Judkins. Thank God for the run game. Because that's the only thing that really saved Cleveland. They played a clean game yesterday, no penalties, a lot of mistakes made by the Dolphins. The Browns capitalized on it. That's great. But at some point, Dylan Gabriel, what I want to see from him, you got the Patriots coming up. The Browns are a dog in that one, as they should be. I want to see Dylan Gabriel go out there with he should be the most confident rookie quarterback out there. If I make a mistake, that's fine. I have a defense that can help bail me out. Now, you can't make consistent mistakes. But, like Joe Burrow can't make mistakes in Cincinnati. Joe Flacco, he can make mistakes in Cleveland because you have a dominant defense that can get you the ball back without giving up points. Joe Flacco turns it over in Cincinnati, that's a problem. That defense they'll hurt you. You saw it with Jake Browning. Jake Browning turns it over. That defense was not going to bail him out. The Browns defense bailed out Joe Flacco the first time he was in Cleveland. The Bengals defense isn't good enough to do that. Cleveland's defense is good enough to do it this year if you have a turnover here or there. But Joe Flacco had the third most interceptions in the NFL, a handful of weeks in. So that was kind of a problem, but we'll see what happens. I'm just not sold on Joe Flacco or Dylan Gabriel. And I don't know if I'm pushing the Dion narrative or the Shador narrative, but I'll take a Shador turnover or two if it comes with multiple scoring drives a game, as opposed to no turnovers a game and, he got us into field goal position a handful of times. Something has to give. And Dylan Gabriel, to me, just puts off major backup quarterback vibes. They manage him like a backup quarterback. I want to, Jaden Daniels wasn't managed like a rookie. And I'm not saying that coaches didn't take it easy with these guys early on. But I'm just saying, at some point you started to see that. At no point have I felt that Dylan Gabriel is anything but a backup quarterback style of QB that is very accurate, but he's accurate because he doesn't take aggressive chances down the field. All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. College basketball is officially here. We're going to talk about that. The Dayton Flyers looked good over the weekend in their win over Penn State in the CareSource Invitational. Dayton, of course, we'll talk about that. That's continuing tonight at UD Arena. Wright State going to play at UD Arena for the first time since winning their first NCAA tournament game a few years ago back in 2022 in the first four. Wright State is going to take on Ohio, the Bobcats, out of the MAC in the CareSource Classic coming up later on tonight right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Chris Collins and Jim Brown will be on the call for that. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back. All right, and now I'm back. Justin Kinner with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. All right, so right now there's a ton going on. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on the Cincinnati Reds and their offseason moves coming up here. As time goes on, obviously we're about to, the MLB playoffs are still ongoing. A ton of baseball stuff going on. College football. Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country, coming off of a great weekend, bludgeoning Wisconsin, and they head into the bye week undefeated, number 1 team in the country. They prepare for what should have been a top 5 showdown between them and the Nittany Lions, and a national championship contender coming into the season. Now no longer ranked, has zero chance of making the playoffs, winning a national championship, and they fired their head coach less than 2 months into the season. That's how quickly things changed and went downhill for the Nittany Lions, nonetheless. But that's kind of where we're at with that. Ohio State, we talked about it earlier. It was announced that Ohio State and Penn State, no surprise, it'll be a big noon kickoff on November 1st. Ohio State off this weekend, but they'll have the next 2 weeks, as will Penn State, to prepare for one another in Columbus at the Shoe. It'll be a blackout, the Shoe game. But a noon kickoff doesn't make sense. But the bottom line is, I'm not going to argue this one. I was annoyed at first. Ohio State, Penn State should be played under the lights, especially if it was a top 5 showdown. It's not. I don't care. All right. I really don't care about this one. This is just like any other bad team that Ohio State faces at noon. Penn State's not good. But as I stated earlier, it's an interesting situation because Penn State, they've lost 4 straight into the bye week. They lost their head coach. They lost their chance to make the playoffs for the 2nd straight season. They lost a chance to win a national championship. They've lost everything. They don't know what the future holds. The only thing that they can control is the effort that they go out there to fight Ohio State with. Their season comes down to November 1st. They don't care what happens after November 1st. Everything before November 1st has been crap. And the only thing that they care about is beating Ohio State. If Penn State goes on to defeat Ohio State on Saturday, November 1st, it doesn't matter what they do the rest of the way. It's not good enough to get them into the playoffs or anything. It's just they want to, the only way that they'll feel successful this year, considering the circumstances, is if they can kind of put a dent in Ohio State's armor a little bit as we sit here past the halfway point. I think that's what Ohio State has to be careful for. They're going to go out there and be prepared like they've been every week. But if they don't go out there and match Penn State's intensity, I think it could be a lot closer than what we actually think this one can be. And we'll focus on that as we get closer. Again, Ohio State off this week. They'll be back at it next week preparing for Penn State. They'll be using the next 2 weeks to prepare for Penn State nonetheless. But there you go. All right. Over the weekend, college basketball. So as I mentioned, talking college football, talking the Browns, talking the Bengals, Ohio State football, college football, all that fun stuff. It's now time to start to really turn our attention towards college basketball. My thing about college basketball, when we talk so much about the changes in college basketball or in college athletics, when it comes to NIL and the transfer portal, football still feels like football is different, but it still feels like college football. Do you guys? I don't feel like college football has changed. It changed a lot. It's changed, but I don't feel like when I tune in on Saturdays, I'm watching great college football. Ratings are through the roof for college football right now. Attendance, all that fun stuff. College football has changed, but it hasn't changed to the point to where it's unrecognizable. I feel like the sport that has taken the biggest hit is college basketball. I feel like a lot of it has led to fans not being as emotional about it as what they used to. It's hard to be emotional about your college basketball team anymore when every year it's a new 12 that are being rolled out there. Now, you're going to have a couple familiar 3 or 4 names here and there, but overall, you're having to re-fall in love with the roster every single year. When you would have recruiting classes, you would have the class of whatever year come in, you would see them come in as freshmen. Some would be redshirted. Some would get spot minutes here and there. Some would be really good, but you were a part of their journey. You got to watch them come in, fresh out of high school and develop into men and contributors and be a part of the success of the team, whether it's the Dayton Flyers, Wright State, it doesn't matter, Ohio State, whoever. You used to be a part of that journey. For me growing up, I fell in love with Ohio State basketball. That was everyone's like, oh, of course it's Ohio State. But, when I was in high school, we were very fortunate to play in an area that had a lot of guys that would go on to play at Ohio State. And I just thought it was the coolest thing. Jamar Butler was Mr. Basketball over at Shawnee over in Lima. And, to see him play at my high school and then to go play at Ohio State, that was so cool. When I was in high school, we got to go up against Aaron Kraft, and then to see him go to Columbus to play at Ohio State. That was awesome, right? John Diebler, in high school, for our high schools to go up against one another and to, in the tournament to get to play him at Savage Arena over in Toledo, and just the atmosphere for that game, because he was a freaking draw everywhere he went. It was I've never experienced anything like that. I did kind of sense it. I mean, LeBron's LeBron. He's the ultimate draw, but I don't know if there's been Mayo was one. I don't know if there's ever been a draw that was as intense as that. We did kind of experience the John Diebler draw a little bit with Luke Kennard a few years ago. Luke Kennard was, that was a show in itself. He put on a show, but just the following that he had, it was an experience to go watch him, nonetheless. But no, I fell in love with those teams watching, guys like that, and then go on to play in Columbus. I love that. But then they go to Columbus and they develop, and they'd be there for years. We watched Aaron Kraft spend his whole career at Ohio State. Now, I know Dayton, you fans don't care about Aaron Kraft because Ohio State, and everyone remembers that picture. I remember it vividly. Aaron Kraft laying on this is before they changed the branding of the NCAA tournament. Aaron Kraft, after being knocked out by that Elite Eight Dayton Flyers team, he's just laying with his arms behind his head, staring up blankly because his career was just ripped away from him by getting upset by Dayton, right? Like, it was unbelievable. No, but like, we saw him come in as a freshman and make his run at Ohio State. And that's how it used to be. Think about the Dayton Flyers in recent years. Let's go to those Archie Miller teams. You watch the Kendall Pollards and the Kyle Davises, right? You the Scoochie Smiths of the world. You watch those guys come in as boys out of high school and develop into men. And then they were the stars that helped lead, Dayton to success on the floor. But you felt like you were part of that journey. Think back, and shout out to my guy, Chris Wright, a big Chris Wright fan. Chris Wright, he shared the story multiple times about his recruiting journey, about how he always wanted to go to Kentucky, but he never really had that opportunity. Commits to Dayton. Everyone's super excited, but he does ultimately, his mom calls him to come inside and hands him the phone, and it's Tubby, and they want him to go play at Kentucky, but he wanted that. That was his dream, but he ultimately could not turn his back on the Flyers after they took, they went to him, he went to and again, that emotion right there that you felt with the hometown kid like that, going to Dayton and then staying there and then being a star and then going to the NBA and being the star that he was then. And then he's an even bigger star as a human being now, and what he does giving back to the community. Have you guys seen what's going on right now with the projects that he's working on and the programs that he's brought to the area? That's a topic and conversation for later. But the point is I felt like basketball used to be more emotional, more intimate with you, the fans and the players. You were a part of their journeys. Now I just don't get that vibe anymore. And Dayton is a great case study for this too, because like you guys have the most passionate fan base out there for non-Power 4 schools. Like, I don't think there's another non-Power 4 school that has the passion that Dayton does when it comes to their fan base. But like, your passion's there because you love the program and the history of the program, but you connected with those guys because they came in as boys out of high school. You fell in love with the development of them and how they contributed to the community and to the team, and they were there for a few years. You had to learn the new faces every year, yes, but not the whole roster. That's not the case anymore, and it's frustrating. And for Dayton Flyers fans who are the most passionate, I think your passion is really being challenged right now. And this is not me taking shots at anybody or anything. I'm just saying Dayton has one of the most passionate fan bases out there, and I think you guys are being tested right now. And it's nothing that Dayton's doing or anybody. It's just the college landscape. Your passion's being tested right now because now you're like, okay, my passion is for the Dayton Flyers program, yes, but like, you're going to fall in love with this roster and it's going to blow up again, and you're going to have to start it all over. And eventually I think you're going to get fan fatigue, and I think it's going to be harder to keep everyone invested into their season tickets. And by the way, UD Arena is going nowhere. It's not going to drop down to 8,000 fans a game instead of 13. I'm not saying any of that. I do think it's going to be more of a challenge, though, to connect with fans, because I think some of that emotional appeal is going to be lost. That's nothing that Dayton's doing wrong or that you're doing wrong. That's just me, how I view college basketball right now. It's very unfortunate. College football is a different animal. Think about, even with all of the NIL and all of the transfer portal and everything, there's a lot of player movement, yes. But we are going to get 3 years of Jeremiah Smith, right? We got how many years of Travion Henderson, right? You know what I mean? Like, we're going to get multiple years of Julian Sand. that there is something to be said about that. That's why college football, to me as a Buckeye fan, I still have that love and passion for it, because we watched Jeremiah Smith last year as a true freshman just dominate college football and have some of his biggest games on the biggest stage. And here he is in year 2, dominating again with a different quarterback. And we're going to get to see him again next year, right? Like, that stuff matters. College basketball is lacking that. It's lacking that. And Dayton fascinates me because that passion for that fan base, you guys, it's always been there. But I think what has always been the appeal has been the players. They've drawn you in. You've connected with them. It's tough to connect with players anymore because of the constant turnover when it comes to the roster. It's not the coach's fault. It's not the program's fault. It's just college basketball in general, as far as I'm concerned. So it's interesting. But Dayton played over the weekend in an exhibition game. And one of the newcomers that is getting a lot of attention, a grad transfer in Keontae Jones. All right, he was Dayton's top scorer over the weekend. For those who were at the game, he had 17 points. He had 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal. And I guess you can call that his unofficial, UD debut. But Dayton took care of business over the weekend, 78-62 with the win over Penn State. But everyone's talking about Keontae Jones because the kid just looks different. He just looks different out there. And, that was one of the biggest gets that they got this past offseason, in the transfer portal. And it already looked like it's, leading to a massive success out on the floor. It's an exhibition game. I said this earlier. I'm like, exhibition games are a lot like preseason polls. If the preseason poll tells you something about your team that you like, it's a credible poll. If the poll comes out and it doesn't have your team propped up, who cares? It's a preseason poll. What the hell do those people know anyways? That's kind of like exhibition games. Oh, man, we looked really, really good in our exhibition game. We're going to be really, really good this season. And then you get Xavier, who lost to Murray State, I believe, over the weekend in exhibition play. And you have Patino coming out, tweeting out to the fans, hey, everyone relax. It's an exhibition game. It doesn't matter. Well, if you won that exhibition game, it would matter. But because you lost, you're trying to control the temperature of the fans. So now you're telling them it doesn't matter. Do exhibition games matter or not? That's the question. I guess that's the question of like preseason games. I think this is the same thing to that. Dayton's going to have another exhibition game coming up with Bowling Green. And if they struggle against Bowling Green, will the temperature die down a bit? Who knows? I just want the regular season to get here. But the bottom line is we're talking about it, and it is fun to talk college basketball. No doubt about it. No doubt. But exhibition play will continue for a lot of our local teams. We are, of course, Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball. Wright State's going to be in action coming up later on tonight. They're going to be taking on the Ohio Bobcats out of the MAC, of course. This is an exhibition matchup, and it is a part of the 3rd annual CareSource Invitational, which is, look, this is a series of college basketball games that are dedicated to raising awareness and funds for adolescent and young adult mental health, centered around the powerful message, it's okay to not be okay. Now, there are many of these CareSource Invitationals throughout the country, of course, and this is the CareSource Invitational Dayton region, of course. So there's a lot of teams involved. You saw Dayton take on Penn State yesterday. And there's other games going on today, but Wright State will take on Ohio coming up later on this evening right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. And we'll get a chance to hear and see Wright State for the first time. Like I'm going to tell you right now, with rosters that turn over a lot, there's a lot of guys I'm excited to get to see play again coming up later on tonight in exhibition play. As far as returning players go, Solomon Callahan, this kid just looks different. Okay, the ball just looks different coming out of his hand on his, whether he's, when it comes to his ball handling, his ability to shoot the basketball. Got a chance to see him in practice about a month ago. And again, just some of the shots he was hitting. It's one thing to be able to hit a wide open spot up 3 from anywhere on the floor, but this kid hits contested shots, fadeaway shots. He takes difficult shots, but he has the green light to take them because he can make them. I'm telling you, when you go to Wright State games this year, if you go tonight, Solomon Callahan, number 13, keep an eye out for him. That kid could play. Okay, I'm a big fan of his. Logan Woods has been around for a few years. He can defend his ass off, and he can shoot the 3. He's just one of those. You need a player like him on your roster because he's going to do a bunch of the little things at the very high level. And when you put all those little things together, he's one of the more complete players. I'd say he's a step above a role player. Like, you need good role players. He's a role player, but he also provides a lot of things that you desperately need to be a good team. Logan Woods coming back is huge. I'm excited to see both of those tonight. And then, like I said, there's a lot of new players that I'm excited to see how this is going to be pieced together. Clint Sargent's in his second season as head coach, but he's been around the program for many, many years. He was associate head coach when Scott Nagy was here. So he's been around a minute. He knows the city. He knows the recruiting area. He knows what it takes to win. Coming off a tough year last year, no doubt. But we'll see what kind of changes are made this year as they look to turn the corner. Clint Sargent, 10th year overall with the program, second year as the head coach. All right. I'm Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio. Chris Collins and Jim Brown will be on the call later on tonight. 8 o'clock, 8:10 is the tip-off time. Maybe a little later, depending on the first game that's going on there. But we'll be on later on tonight. Excited to hear Chris and Jim on the call later on this evening. If you're interested in tickets to tonight's game between Wright State and Ohio, text Raiders to 937-518-1410. I do have a good chunk of tickets. First come, first serve. Text Raiders if you're interested in attending tonight's game at UD Arena, and we'll distribute those as quickly as we can. So while supplies last, of course, if you want to win a chance to win some tickets to tonight's game exhibition at UD Arena, text Raiders to 937-518-1410. And that's the other unique thing about this too, with the CareSource Invitational obviously being hosted by Dayton at UD Arena. You guys know where I sit on this. I think there's a bunch of cowardly people that pull the strings with Dayton when it comes to the decision to play Wright State, and those cowardly people decide not to make sure that this matchup doesn't happen. So this isn't the first time we've seen Wright State in recent history play at UD Arena. They were there a couple years ago, 2022. When they beat Bryant in the NCAA First Four, right? That was the Raiders' very first NCAA tournament win in program history. And to do that, at UD Arena, that's pretty dang cool. To do that in a place that, in a city that constantly puts up these, unwritten rules of, well, we could play Wright State, but only if this, and this, man, forget that. All right. They don't need Dayton. Dayton doesn't need them. Completely get it. But Wright State, it's to see them play at UD, but not play UD when it's UD's fault, I have a problem with that. But it'll be cool to see the Raiders at UD Arena coming up later on tonight. Over the years, Wright State, though, they have played 22 games at UD Arena. All right, they've 22 games they have played at UD Arena. They have won 15 of those 22 games played at UD Arena. All right, we all know about the Gem City Jam. All right, they, Wright State, Dayton played the Gem City Jam 8 times. I think it was between 88 and 98 in a little 10-year span. There was about 8 times that the two teams went up against one another. 5 of those 8 games were played at UD Arena. And the last time that Wright State played at UD Arena before the First Four in 2022 was all the way back in 1997. So it's a rare occurrence when this happens, but it's an exhibition game tonight against Ohio. And we'll have that for you right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Let's get back into the NFL. Let's talk about the AFC North once again. We'll get back into more college football talk on tomorrow's show when Jason Fitz jumps on from Yahoo Sports. Excited to chat with him. A lot to get into. The Buckeyes, the #1 team in the country, heading into the bye week as they prepare to take on Penn State in a matchup that we thought would be a top 5 showdown. That is no longer the case, but it is the big noon kickoff on November 1st, and that both teams have a bye this week as they prepare for one another. So we'll talk about that with Jason Fitz tomorrow. No doubt about it. All right, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back.
Get a great deal on select Kubota construction equipment featuring durable